Madam Vice Chancellor, I present Professor Beverley Diamond, a renowned feminist ethnomusicologist. She is Professor Emerita at Memorial University of Newfoundland, where she held the Canada Research Chair in Ethnomusicology from 2002 to 2015. She also taught at McGill many years ago, at Queen's, and at York Universities. Diamond was the president of the Society for Ethnomusicology, and at Memorial, she established the Research Center for the Study of Media, Music, and Place, where she created the Back on Track CD series of archival recordings with exhaustive documentation in collaboration with communities in Newfoundland and Labrador and other parts of Canada. She has played a major role in developing ethnomusicology as a significant discipline in Canada, establishing programs in the field at Queen's, York, and Memorial. Diamond's publications have explored cultural identity, feminist musicology, Canadian music historiography, Indigenous modernity, and the construction of social meaning via audio technologies. She is the author of Native American Music in Eastern North America and co-editor of Music and Gender and Aboriginal Music in Contemporary Canada, Echoes and Exchanges. She has received multiple awards, including Member of the Order of Canada, Trudeau Fellow, and the Shirk Gold Medal, the highest honor from the Social Sciences and Humanities Research Council of Canada. Diamond's research focuses on Indigenous musical culture in Canada and Scandinavia. She looks at Canadian Inuit and First Nations song traditions and sound-producing instruments, and at Sami Yoik, a traditional form of song from Lapland. Her fieldwork in communities in Canada and abroad provides important insights into issues of cultural diversity and Indigenous modernity. Her work employs new styles of interaction and collaboration that allow her to investigate biases and values that frame varied accounts of Canada's cultural history. She has worked to bring Aboriginal and other communities into contact with academic audiences around subjects of common interest, such as cultural property, gender, and technology. She has taken to heart the mandate of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission on Residential Schools in Canada, looking at expressive culture and soundscapes of colonial institutions, and at music as a mode of trauma recovery. This honorary doctorate comes at a propitious time. It is essential to recognize the importance of Indigenous peoples as we look back at the 150th anniversary of the Confederation and at the 375th anniversary of the European founding of Montreal. McGill and Montreal are situated on unceded territory, which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among Indigenous peoples, including the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe nations. We must honor and respect the diverse Indigenous peoples connected to this territory on which we gather today. McGill is also working to support Indigenous studies and education. The Provost Task Force seeks to heed the Truth and Reconciliation Commission by engaging and collaborating with Indigenous communities. Professor Diamond's work provides a wonderful model for us. At the same time, the Schulich School of Music anticipates hiring an ethnomusicologist specializing in Canadian Indigenous music this coming year, coinciding with Professor Diamond's tenure as a Distinguished Visiting Chair in winter 2018. We are very happy to honor her here today. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to invite our most recent graduate, Dr. Beverley Diamond, to deliver the convocation address. Dr. Diamond.
Chancellor Meehan, Principal and Vice Chancellor Fortier, Mr. Cobbett, Chair of the Board of Governors, Interim Dean Cumming, proud parents and guests, and most of all, members of the graduating class of 2017. I am very honored to accept this honorary doctorate from McGill University and especially delighted to share this day with those of you who are graduating. It is also a huge responsibility to accept this honor on the land of the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabeg First Nations. As was already mentioned, McGill was actually the first university at which I taught. I won't tell you how long ago. And so this place has a special resonance for me as well as you. Of course, McGill has changed a lot in those decades, as has the study of sound and music. You're graduating at a particularly dynamic moment that some are describing as a sonic turn in scholarship, especially the social sciences, but in other domains of life as well. And I'm going to talk a little bit about change for the next few minutes. Incremental change in how we study music may become more radical change. If you return in 20 years, I wonder how similar or different the curriculum will be at the Schulich School of Music. Will McGill and other Canadian universities follow the recommendations of a recent college music task force that advocates a turn away from teaching students to play repertoire and a fundamental shift to emphasize creativity, diversity, and integration as the most relevant and indeed essential bases for music study in the 21st century? Sound studies, and McGill is very lucky to have leading scholars in this field, already has taken us in the direction of integration. Of course, that report did miss one thing. Most of us love specific repertoire, whether it's a new composition or that pop song we first fell in love over. Pieces of music, then, will undoubtedly continue to enrich personal and collective memory, and this is something quite fundamental for our sanity and our future. Another call for change in university music schools came from a recent BBC Music magazine. They predicted that in 20 years, all the current subjects in music schools would be replaced by courses organized around research creation, digital technology, and ethnomusicology. Of course, Kermit at McGill has been at the forefront of digital technology for many years, and I was delighted to see my field of ethnomusicology on that list. Who knows? We'll come back in 20 years and have a conversation. If you come back in 20 years, I wonder what sort of work you will be doing in a world where working with sound is also changing immensely. You've all been immersed in music at McGill, and some of you will undoubtedly continue in music-centered careers. But it's useful to note that the study of sound and music is relevant and increasingly seen to be relevant to many fields: health, architecture, business, Indigenous law, to name just a few. Consider some examples of how our influence is spreading. As we learn more and more about the ways music contributes to wellness, the biomedical fields have begun to take note. In St. John's, Newfoundland, where I live, for instance, the research center I directed until recently was approached by a family doctor doing research on Alzheimer's. He realized how music was a medium that triggered and improved memory, and he sought help in identifying place-specific repertoire from different decades. We also have a choir in St. John's run jointly by faculty from medicine and music for people with respiratory problems. At Queen's University, there are investigations into music as a vehicle for transforming the brainwaves of PTSD victims. And there are hundreds of arts initiatives for Indigenous survivors of Indian residential schools. While some reflect a rather naive belief in the therapeutic ethic, the far too simple idea that music must surely be a cure for the woes of society, some are reporting irrefutable positive results. At the same time, music is used for some of the most violent purposes ever in human history. The American military, and undoubtedly others, deploy no-touch torture, sound played at deafening volumes, so loud as to damage vital internal organs. Or they play to prisoners music that the prisoners revile over and over to inflict psychological torture. So it's a mixed picture. Of course, music aligns differently for different folks. For many Indigenous communities, song is law. Among city planners, on the other hand, song is money. The arts are increasingly regarded as drivers of urban economies. Music's purposes then remain varied and contested. And whatever sort of work you might be doing in the next 20 years and beyond, the special skills you acquired in music and McGill should make you attentive not just to aesthetic nuance, as important as that is, but to these localized and deeply invested members of the social fabric who turn music in such different directions. Finally, in the context of a remarkably multiple and changing world, I wonder how you will continue your education in sound and music after you leave with your degree today. I've learned some of the most important things about sound and music well beyond my studies, my formal studies in music, and I think you will too. One thing that I needed to learn, for instance, and that Indian residential school survivors have taught me, was how deeply the sounds of oppression sit in the psyches and bodies of those who have been traumatized. The sound of muffled crying is the most frequently referenced sound in the published volume of testimony in the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission released in 2015. Any process of conciliation will need to recognize that sound and music tell us a great deal about encounter, and that we need to think about the nature of encounter. As one whose research often involves ethnography, I've had the privilege of learning many valuable sonic skills and understandings from Indigenous elders and contemporary musicians who've kindly agreed to work with me. One encouraged me to hear the ringing of the sound of thunder on a clear day. Think about it, thunder on a clear day. It's rare magic. We kind of hope there won't be any of this today, but there might be. Another taught me to listen differently to intercultural music making. He puts opera singers and traditional yoikers into dialogue, sometimes with rock or jazz accompaniment. Of course, you might say unexpected combinations are arguably the expected in the 21st century, the norms of world music. But what if we resist listening normatively, resist the sonic grayout, to think about what sharp sonic juxtapositions mean in terms of the uneven histories of musicians and people more generally? The theorist of modernity, Bruno Latour, argues compellingly that modernism was defined by our very propensity to put things into specific categories, nature and culture, different academic disciplines, genres of music, for instance. And we know that they were developed mostly by elites to make hierarchies of knowledges that cast some people as less important or even less human. We have to decide whether in our modernity we hear those stylistic clashes as the wrong way to sing or as a marvelous multiplicity. Furthermore, are such juxtapositions pastiche or political messaging? And who benefits when we decide to listen one way or another? I've reflected briefly on changing sonic worlds because you're at a point of change. So as you begin the next phase of your life, I hope that your sonic creativity continues to grow, your capacity to understand the social formations that underpin sound and music continues to deepen, and that you embrace and listen respectfully to the incommensurable and even the unfathomable. Thank you very much.